You're on mute, Rebecca.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Rebecca Smondrowski, and I want to welcome you all to another meeting of the Special Populations Committee. Before we get started, I'd like to give my colleagues a moment to introduce themselves. Ms. Silvestri.
Good morning, Carla Silvestri.
Dr. Daca.
Judy Daca, good morning.
Good morning. We also have with us some staff from the Board of Education's office, as well as from the superintendent's office. And I will have them introduce themselves as we go along. First up, I would like to ask if there are any questions or concerns about the April 27th meeting informational summary. No? Okay, if not, can I have a motion to approve the summary?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. And then let's see, I've got a couple notes here. We are not accepting live questions, but for anybody watching, if they have questions after this meeting, they are encouraged to reach out to our staff. With that, I think that I will let Gwen Mason go ahead and start things off for us.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so very much to the Special Populations Subcommittee. Again, I'm Gwendolyn Mason, the Acting Associate Superintendent for the Office of Special Education. So to you, Ms. Smondrowski, Dr. Daca, and also to Ms. Silvertree, it's a pleasure to be a part of this discussion this morning on this important topic. I'd also love to introduce other staff members. With our Director of Special Education Services.
Good morning, Philip Lynch, Director of Department of Special Education Services. Glad to be here.
And of course, my chief, who has joined us this morning.
Good morning, Rochelle Rubin, Chief of Teaching, Learning in Schools. It's a pleasure to be here.
And finally, my assistant to the Office of Special Education, Ms. Brenda Brown.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Brenda Brown.
Thank you again for this opportunity.
And welcome back, Gwen.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Daca. It's just a joy to be back with you for this school year. And thank you so very much for this opportunity.
I'm glad you were.
Say that again, Dr. Daca.
Oh, I'm glad you were available.
Thank you so very, very much. It's my pleasure. So we are excited this morning to have the opportunity to talk to you regarding the in-person learning for students with significant cognitive disabilities. And we have prepared a PowerPoint for your review as we engage in this discussion. And we want this to be a very, very open and lively discussion about this critical group of students who we know have certainly been impacted by the pandemic and our efforts as a district to improve the quality of their services. So I'm going to begin at this particular time with that presentation. So as you can see, again, our focus will be clearly linked to the learning of students with significant cognitive disabilities. If we go to the next slide. Our focus, again, will be on how we are addressing the disparate impact of the pandemic on students with significant cognitive disabilities. The next slide, please. Montgomery County Public Schools has always been a phenomenal district in terms of offering an array of services for students with significant cognitive disabilities. We know that students, even with that disability code, their needs differ, their academic needs differ, as well as their social emotional needs. And our school system has always prided itself in offering an array of services, which range from autism services to the extensions program, for learning for independence, our school community-based classes. We certainly have our special schools, Longview, Rock Terrace, Carl Sandburg, and Stephen Knowles, and also very unique to Montgomery County. Unlike other jurisdictions, we even have a set of services for our students between the ages of 18 and 21 who continue to participate in those strategies that will enable them to transition into adult life with a higher level of independence. And that's community and career connections, as well as transition training for independence. So we're very proud of this array of services that we offer. And we also have some students with significant cognitive disabilities that are included and get access to their supports and services appropriately so. The next slide, please. As you are aware, as members of the Committee for Special Populations, in the spring of this year, there was a presentation that was conducted that talked about the return to MCPS. And I thought it was important to start again with that framework because it will show where we began with the return to in-person learning and where we are now. As you can see from looking at this chart, the different programs and services are clearly delineated. But at that particular time, in March of 2021, while an in-person opportunity was provided, I believe that Montgomery County made a very strong and strategic decision, and that was to make certain that the first core set of students that would return to in-person learning would be students with significant cognitive disabilities, because again, the impact of the pandemic on them was significant. And so as you look at these data, you can see that all the way to the column to the far right, that only 44% of our population, however, decided to participate in in-person learning. And the vast majority of our students continue to remain receiving virtual instruction. One of the things that took place, however, as a part of the return to schools in the spring of 2021, and if we take a look at the very next slide, we will see evidence that it was imperative that MCPS teachers work with parents to discuss the need for compensatory services. So very briefly, I just want to reiterate that compensatory services are a process that requires teams to discuss the impact of the loss of instruction or the impact of the loss of what's known as a free, appropriate public education. And according to the data that I've reviewed since returning to the district, 1,113 students with significant cognitive disabilities were found eligible to receive compensatory services. And that again is an agreement between parents and the school system, recognizing that academic needs as well as social emotional needs or related services like speech therapy or physical therapy or occupational therapy needed to be addressed for this population of students. As we go to the very next slide, this particular slide really delineates and shares information regarding how we went about providing those services. So Mr. Lynch, Phil Lynch, our Director of Special Ed Services, shared with me that his team worked with families to provide opportunities during the summer. So we served approximately 500 students during the summer so that they were able to receive compensatory services to address that loss that impacted those students in a negative way as a result of the pandemic. And we collected data regarding those students. So we wanted to get a sense of the areas where those students were demonstrating loss, and we wanted to continue to monitor the data to see how they were beginning to slowly regain some of the areas that they lost from an instructional standpoint or from a social, emotional, or behavioral needs standpoint, or as related to the delivery of special related services like speech, occupational therapy, or physical therapy. As we go to the very next slide, you can see that in addition to compensatory services, we've always offered extended school year services. These services have been required by law for well over 30 years. This means that there's always going to be a set of students who must receive extended school year services during the summer months because without those services, when the school year begins in August, they have demonstrated such a level of regression that it really thwarts their ability to continue to perform and make progress. And so we offered compensatory services this summer, and these data reflect those services provided to students with significant cognitive disabilities. And according to Mr. Lynch, this was a successful process. It was challenging. We were trying to get staff in place to provide these services, but they were able to do so. So 95% of our students with significant cognitive disabilities participated in these services. We had a very small percentage of parents who declined services, but that happens on an annual basis for a variety of different reasons. But we're very pleased that we had a 95% participation rate. You will also note that 1,037 of those families chose in-person learning for their children, and 621 families chose to continue in a virtual mode to receive those particular extended school year services. If you go to the very next slide, this particular slide really reflects that very unique population of students that I think Montgomery County is really exceptional in addressing the needs in a very unique way, because even for those students between the ages of 18 and 21, the Career Community Connections Program and the Transition Training Program offered services for 35 students. And those students had an opportunity to focus on their travel training skills, their independent skills that would really help them again as they transition to more independent living opportunities once they exit Montgomery County at the age of 21. And so we've collected data for these students, and we are continuing, of course, these services during the school year. If we go to the very next slide, this particular slide shows an estimate of the number of students with significant cognitive disabilities who have returned to in-person learning. What's really important to note is the significant increase in the percentage of families who chose in-person learning. So I shared with you that in March, we only had 44% of our families who chose in-person learning, but now we're at 98% of our families who've made that decision, with only 56 students receiving virtual instruction who fall within this particular category. And so we're very, very pleased to have these students back, in our schools and getting access to instruction. And we're also, to the extent appropriate, providing virtual services to those families who are participating in the virtual academy. If we go to the very next slide, just to give you a little insight in terms of who the students are by grade level who are in the virtual academy, we can see that the vast majority are at the elementary level, K through 5, 11 students at the middle school level, and 18 at the high school level. And of course, because of the 18 to 21-year-old program for the Career Community Connections and the Transition Services Program, 100% of those students returned to in-person learning. So we're really pleased to be able to serve these particular students. But now that we have them back in our programs and in person, as well as virtual services, if we go to the next slide, I'm going to allow Phil Lynch to talk to you about the importance of the instruction that we're providing these students, utilizing a variety of resources and materials aligned with the Office of Curriculum and Instructional Programs. So, Mr. Lynch.
Thank you, Dr. Mason. Instruction for all students is aligned with the grade level standards, and that's no different for students with significant cognitive disabilities. The MCPS curriculum is the starting point for teachers as they adapt materials for students with cognitive disabilities. I'm going to share with you a little bit of the resources that we have available for you. If you could take a look at the packet that you have, I'm going to point to a couple of resources. The first two resources that I wanted you to take a look at are used during professional development and to support teachers as they work to adapt materials from the general education curriculum. All of our teachers regardless of the student population that they work with, are exposed to and have access to the professional development for the grade level curriculum. There's a resource called ALO Benchmark Advanced Planning Template and ALO Eureka Math Planning Template. So these are examples, if you can pull those out of your packet, of two planning templates that teachers will be trained to use that are designed to support their transition or crosswalk from the grade level standard curriculum over to the alternate outcomes that are aligned with that grade level standard curriculum. You can see also, I'll point out a few things. You can see that the standard curriculum is there with the indicators as well as the alternate outcomes. If you look at the benchmark advanced unit curriculum, I'll point out one thing that we're going to come back to in a little bit. On the second or on third page, in the bottom right, there's a reference to real world applications. As we move through the presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. Other resources that we provide teachers to supplement this work of adapting the materials for students with significant cognitive disabilities include some of the other materials in your packet. We have an example of attainment materials, which is a suite of lessons that are adapted for teachers to access. These two are aligned to grade level standards. You have in your packet one example, but there are others that are provided to teachers. The example there is the English Language Arts Teacher's Guide. So you can take a look at what those materials look like. In addition,
Mr. Lynch, I apologize for interrupting. I'm not sure what package you're referencing or referring to.
So we do.
I just have the PowerPoint.
I apologize. I was told you all were receiving some other supplemental materials.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Do you not have those materials?
They came via email, and I can send them to you again right now.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. I apologize for referring to what you don't have in front of you, but what I will do is, again, just show you that we have two examples of crosswalks that teachers are trained on to use to connect to the general curriculum, one for math and one for English language arts. And then in addition, we purchase some supplemental materials that help adapt those materials and lessons for teachers by providing them ready-made adapted resources. An English language arts resource is from Attainment series. And the email that you'll receive will include an example of the English language arts teacher's guide. And then we also have another resource called Unique Learning Systems. The example that you have there is a middle school lesson, and it is a history lesson. So you just get a taste for what those lessons look like when they are adapted, but yet aligned to the grade level standards. If we could go back to the presentation, that would be great. Next slide, please. So in addition to those core instructional materials that you'll have a chance to take a look at when you have a moment, of course, students with disabilities will receive related services as outlined on their IEP. That would include speech and language, occupational therapy, physical therapy. These services are being delivered in person, and it is important, and they are a very important part of each student's instructional program. Next slide. Students with significant cognitive disabilities are assessed, as are all students, using a state assessment. They participate in the alternate assessment. The assessment this year is called Dynamic Learning Systems. The state has used some different products of different vendors to deliver that assessment, but we're working with one called Dynamic Learning Systems this year. And they are assessed in grades 3 through 8, and that at different high school levels on the different areas of English language arts and math, as well as science. Next slide. I'm going to turn it back to Gwen for a minute. She's going to say a few words about community-based instruction, and then I'll take it over.
Thank you very much. One of the areas that I know board is very interested in is community-based instruction. And this particular document was actually a project of mine before I left Montgomery County Public Schools. It was important to me at that time when I was the director of special ed services that schools fully understood the importance of community-based instruction because we wanted to emphasize that instruction in the classroom, which is aligned to the standards, and yet we use adapted materials, as Mr. Lynch just shared, that when students engage in community-based instruction, that's an extension of the learning that occurs in the classroom environment and provides the opportunity to apply those experiences in the community. That helps to prepare our students for transition services. I will say that this document, which was published the year after I left in 2016, we will have to work to update this particular document. And that's going to be a very exciting project for the Office of Special Education. And it also should include parents who are very much involved in community-based instruction. So I just wanted to share that with you as Mr. Lynch proceeds by telling you more about how we will implement community-based instruction this school year.
Next slide, please. As Dr. Mason referenced, community-based instruction is directly linked to the academic content that students are accessing at that time, as well as their IEP goals and objectives. Community-based instruction is designed to incorporate the use of communication devices, travel training, social emotional learning, and other critical life skills. Next slide. Community-based instruction can occur in the classroom, in the school, and in the external community. It does begin in the classroom in order for teachers to create those connections or those academic skills that students will be generalizing. I'm going to take you through a brief example so you can see what it might look like for that instruction that occurs in the classroom to be connected to those other settings. If we could go to the next slide. For example, if students are receiving instruction on sorting words by their beginning sound in the classroom setting, that might be generalized to an activity that involves sorting classroom resources by category as they organize and put materials away at the end of the class or at the end of the day. Next slide. Outside of the classroom, that activity may be extended beyond the walls of that room into other aspects of the school community where students may work in the media center to sort books and to categorize them and to help support the shelving of those books, working with the support of an adult or independently depending on their skill level. Next slide. If we extend that even further out into the community, in that larger community, that type of activity could be extended to the local library and involve students selecting different types of library books while becoming familiar with the checkout process as they move through the process of taking books home. So that's just one brief example of how community-based instruction may connect directly to specially designed instruction in the classroom and be generalized across 3 different settings. Next slide. The community-based instruction guide that Dr. Mason referenced provides staff with examples of appropriate external community sites. It gives them many resources that they can draw from. And it also, in keeping with health and safety guidance from the CDC and from MCPS, schools will receive an updated guidance document that focuses on communication to parents, site selection, and safety measures. So that's a summary of community-based instruction. I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Mason.
If we could go to the next slide. We know that in our population of students with significant cognitive disabilities, that our families and our schools are always ensuring that our children are using personal protective equipment. And we recognize that for some populations, and some of the students that we serve in this particular cadre of students, that they may be a little resistant at times or not fully understand the significance and importance of wearing a mask. Well, luckily for our school system, two central office staff members, Chris Secan and Bill McGrath, have worked with the entire school district on committees to really discuss the importance of personal protective equipment. And they have really been a part of the planning and execution of the delivery of these kind of equipment and resources to ensure that our students are safe. But in addition to that, you will also receive, I believe, electronically as well, some of the activities that are being done to provide lessons for our students with this population. So for example, there are lessons like this one, and I know that it's not quite visible, but it says, what makes us safe, in our schools? And we talk about positive reinforcers that school-based staff can use to encourage students to maintain and wear their mask. We also created stories and activities and training activities for our teachers to use that use PEC symbols, or those symbols that are often associated with words. So you have a picture that correlates with a word, typically very much embedded into the daily instruction of this population. And then there are visual pictures that are used to show perhaps a parent or mom using a mask on a student, fitting their child for a mask, or a teacher. And then we have, of course, social stories. Social stories are usually very successful with our students because it really helps them to relate to the experience. And oftentimes, some of the social stories linked to masks might say things like, COVID is making people sick, so we wear masks to keep us and others safe. And there are pictures that correlate with those particular messages that are utilized in our classrooms. So we really want to help our students to recognize that across all environments, they wear their personal protective equipment. So going into the community, we also know that we continue to wear that equipment to keep us safe. And there's an example of a story. It says, I wear a mask every time I leave my house, or I wear a mask when I leave school and I go out into the community. And sometimes one of the sites that a community-based instructional trip might involve might be Giant, the grocery store. And we know that masks are required when you enter a grocery store. And so a lot of social skills and preparation can be done with this population of students to help them as they make that transition. And of course, we delve into washing your hands and talking about all the other personal kinds of things that need to take place to keep our students safe. So to make sure that we have the continuum of how we can deliver community-based instruction, whether it be in class, in school, or in the community, we will constantly emphasize personal and protective equipment because we know that that's a major. I shared with the Office of Special Education Central Office staff a document that was published by the U.S. Department of Education, disparate impacts of COVID-19 on America's students, about students with disabilities. And one of the things that I wanted to remind the staff upon my return is that our focus this year would be to make certain that we address compensatory services, work with our families, support our schools during this very challenging time, but most importantly, make sure that we address the academic performance and achievement of our students, because we know that prior to the pandemic, students with disabilities continue to lag behind their non-disabled peers academically. And then you compound it with the pandemic. So our work as our students return to in-person learning has to be with a very, very clear focus on improving the academic performance of our students. And that's always our goal, but we want to make sure that we do so in a manner that keeps them safe. And as we go to the next slide, we were so excited at the beginning of this year to have the opportunity to have new teachers who participated in professional learning so that they would be prepared to support this population of students. And in working with our new teachers, we focused on these critical areas. And I want to just pull out a few. As you heard, Phil Lynch talk about the curriculum. They received information regarding that. You'll notice community-based instruction was embedded in the training that was offered to our new educators. We also discussed the use of personal protective equipment and in-person learning. And of course, the other critical areas of alternate standards and assessments that our students must participate in. So we feel that while the challenge is certainly daunting, we are ready and will continue each and every day throughout this school year to support our schools, support our principals and our leaders to help us to achieve these goals and to work collaboratively with our families. And I wanted to reiterate that in addition to our new teachers, Montgomery County recognized that it was important to go back and to a model that we'd had years ago, and they decided to hire a supervisor who would be responsible for supporting our Learning for Independence, our school community-based classes, and the extensions program. And so we're delighted that Anne Marie Telegari has joined us along with her team to help us to provide the additional focus and attention on these particular services, that are needed each and every day. And so we believe that from what we've shared with you today, that we will continue with our commitment to provide quality services. And we recognize that we have the challenges that we must face, but we will look at each and every one of those challenges and work collaboratively with our stakeholders, both internally and externally, to help us to address those concerns. And so if we could go to the next slide, please. I want to thank all of you, first of all, as board members, many who I have known for such a long time, for your continued support and advocacy for students with disabilities. I have always loved and respected you for your work in that area. And I really would like to open it up now to questions from you and additional discussion regarding our efforts to address this population. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the update. I want to check in with my colleagues and see if they have any questions. But first, I did have one clarifying question. Mr. Lynch, you mentioned for the community-based instruction in the PowerPoint, it reads, in keeping with the guidance from the CDC, schools will receive updated guidance on the provision of community-based instructions, and such as places that they can go and things you can do. When will they be receiving that guidance?
So I have actually collaborated with Mr. Lynch to develop a memorandum which will be issued this month. And that memorandum really reiterates, again, utilizing the tool of the community-based instruction document, reminding them that instruction can be provided in the classroom, in the community, or in the school setting. But there's one piece that I did emphasize in the memo that's about to go out, is that I think it's important for those classroom teachers, not through a formal IEP process. We don't need another meeting, but to talk to parents about the types of external community opportunities that you would like those children to have. Because I think that parents need to be able to weigh in. Every parent doesn't have the same level of comfort with certain community experiences that are beyond the school environment. And so we want to make sure that parents have that opportunity to talk to their classroom teachers about those experiences and to give some input. So that really is the guidance, and that information will go out this month. I just reviewed actually the document this week.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Before I ask any other questions, I want to see if Dr. Daca or Ms. Silvestre have any questions that they would like to start with. Dr. Daca?
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. And I'm especially interested in the lesson plans, and they're adapted from our regular curriculum, but does that mean they have fewer examples that they have to do or fewer problems they have to do? Or I don't know, how do they do the adaptation? Is there a simple way to express that?
Sure, I can give you a brief explanation. For each of those standards, there's what we call a core content connector. There's which would be the kind of the core representation of what that learning needs to look like for that standard for those students. And so when we use the word adapted, what the teachers are really doing are designing lessons that connect to what has been determined to be the core content connector for that standard. It's kind of a boiled down version of that standard. So while a standard, could be taken to multiple different levels, this will be the core of that standard. And then the materials really are connected to that standard. So for example, with an activity like learning about photosynthesis, you could take it to multiple levels. I apologize. Multiple levels in terms of the learning and the detail around photosynthesis and cell analysis and all of that. But you also could have the core content a component of that, which is the transmission of the energy from the sun into the food for the plant. So that's just a brief example.
Thank you.
Sorry. Ms. Silvestre?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And Dr. Mason, nice to meet you. We haven't met yet.
Yes.
Hopefully in person in the hallways soon.
Yes.
I appreciated the presentation. I wanted to, first of all, thank you for talking about the onboarding of new teachers. I think that you had to bring on quite a number of new staff. And so it was good to hear about some of the training that they took in order to work with our students. I wanted to ask about, I remember in the spring thinking, oh my gosh, the special ed folks are going to be really overwhelmed with reviewing IEPs in order to make sure that every student has a up-to-date IEP that is addressing the pandemic loss, as well as the work that we do at the start of the school year. How are you doing with keeping up with the IEPs? Are you on track? Are you need additional help? How's that going?
I want to let Mr. Lynch describe a little bit of how that's working and how we're tracking that.
Thank you for the question. So as we presented in the spring, we focused our efforts initially as students were returning to school around those conversations for students that were graduating, students that were exiting because they were post age 21, and also students that had the most significant needs, as Dr. Mason mentioned earlier, many of whom were eligible for those extended school year services that she described. So we focused our efforts around that population initially. And one of the things we shared with you in the spring was that we would be having these ongoing conversations with the remainder of those families and those students throughout the course of this school year. So we are prepared now as the teachers are settling into the school year to provide them with an update on that training that we provided them in the spring. We gave them a training module that really walked through how to have those conversations. It gave them examples of different pathways that they could use in order to deliver compensatory recovery services or to request support for those services to be provided to students. And so now that teachers are back in school, and those conversations will be picking up with those families for whom they have yet to have those discussions. So it's going to be a renewed effort to complete that process, but it is going to be an ongoing process this fall to have the discussions with families and to come to those determinations about which students are eligible for compensatory services and what those services might look like. And then the delivery of those services will be even further beyond that. So once the conversations are held, the determination may be that a student will receive a service for several times a week or once a week over the course of the school year or beyond. And we assume that we'll be looking at continuing to deliver services into next summer.
And I wanted to add, Mrs. Silvestri, that Mr. Lynch made it a priority to review with me and share with me all of the prior training that was done. I'm currently examining that to make sure that it does, in fact, meet the needs that we want to ensure that our teachers can utilize. And we will definitely monitor every single week the status of where we are with compensatory services, for our students. This is, of course, the beginning of school, and I actually have a meeting with the leadership team on Friday. And compensatory services will remain a constant topic where we will consistently monitor every single student, every single case to make sure that those services, are in fact provided. So I want to thank you for raising that question because that is so critical at this time.
And if I may interject, Ms. Wondrowski, to Ms. Silvestri's question for our team, I think one of the things that we can do equally is to build out sort of a chart that would give our board members an opportunity to see the exact numbers we're working with and then where in progress we are with the families. I know that the team has done tremendous work, as they've stated, to make sure that we're compliant, but more so from the standpoint of supporting our students and our families. But I think that chart to look at the numbers and really build that out for the board members to be able to get that picture would be an additional enhancement there.
That sounds wonderful. I think that would be very, very helpful. Ms. Silvestri, I didn't know if you had more questions or if I could just a follow up to what you
go ahead.
Referencing. Thanks. So I too want to say, thank you for the additional updates about the new teachers and the trainings and things. I really hope that I didn't see anything specifically referencing any training on emotional supports for our students who may not really fully understand everything that's been happening. But I do hope that we will really also continue supporting our new teachers, because we all know that special education is a tough job, on the best of circumstances. And these are obviously not the best of circumstances. So I do hope that, we'll continue doing that. And to Ms. Silvestri's point then, as far as the IEPs and things like that, I guess that's part, as you're looking at that as part of the recovery and making determinations as to who would be getting extra supports and how much they're getting. And then who is it? Is it the case manager who's making those determinations? Or I know we're going to talk about this at a different special populations committee meeting, but just for clarity, how is that process happening?
Technically, when you discuss compensatory services, it is not a decision that is made by a case manager. It really is a very formalized discussion where you're really discussing the student with the parent and the school team around the areas that need to be addressed, where we suspect that there may be some skills and some deficits as a result of the pandemic. So that is really a team decision. Compensatory services always has been a team decision, and parents give us a lot of insight. And, particularly when you think about the pandemic, parents are at home and were able to really observe their children and have a real sense of what their children were like prior to the pandemic, and then what it appeared to be areas of concern for them during the pandemic and how virtual learning impacted them. So it's a team discussion and a decision. So parents are fully informed.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. Yeah, because I didn't know if the CARES money funding is something that if we did need additional supports to be able to keep up with the additional needs for the IEPs, that's something that we could do.
We certainly have our funding sources to pay for compensatory services. So through the various different funding streams which I've reviewed since I've been back, I'm really aware of the funds that we do have available. So when we do have to provide service beyond the school day, and that's when compensatory services are provided, we will be able to pay our teachers and for those services, or pay for a private provider, for example, if a parent has one that we agree to pay them for the delivery of those services.
Okay. Ms. Silvestri, you want to go back to your questions?
Yes. My question was about how quarantines might impact the implementation of the IEPs.
Yes, that's really a great question. And as Ms. Rubin knows, we've been working tirelessly to develop a very strong quarantine plan that deals with how to address the needs of a singleton case or for whole class, situations. So Mr. Lynch and I have certainly put together guidance around the fact that we do expect our students to continue to receive their instruction. We know that, of course, when it is a student who is quarantined, that instruction is provided virtually, but we will continue to provide instruction for our students in those critical areas linked to their IEPs. So if it's reading, language, arts, mathematics, and of course, the related services to the extent appropriate and possible in a virtual setting, we will provide those services for our students. We've had, of course, a couple of cases already. In some instances, the actual classroom teacher was able to continue to provide the instruction to the whole class, virtually. And Mr. Lynch this week has been working on some cases to make sure that coverage, is in place to support, our students. Now, I want to say that there are also going to be situations in which we know that the Maryland State Department of Education, under certain conditions, even things that if a student might require interim instructional services or what's called statewide as home teaching, there are going to be cases where that may have to be the conduit for delivering support to students. So it all depends, but we do, in fact, are prepared and are working diligently to provide the necessary support in the event that we have those scenarios. And they are going to continue to occur. So we know that every day we have to be prepared to respond.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very difficult situation.
It is indeed.
Looking over an email that Ms. Madrowski and I received from a advocacy organization, they spoke about the increased risk of COVID complications among the unvaccinated students with cognitive disabilities. Do we take any additional safety measures in the classroom with this population, or is it because the numbers are small, they're able to distance more? I don't know. I wondered if there were any additional precautions.
I know that Mr. Lynch can describe the array of PPE that looks almost like the way you see on television when you watch hospital settings with the gowns, the face shield, and the mask. I mean, those additional levels of PPE are available in our schools. Mr. Lynch, you want to reinforce that for me, please?
Certainly. So we created last year a hierarchy for when and how certain levels of PPE would be provided to staff, and the training would be provided to staff. And that hierarchy included student characteristics that might include students who may be resistant or unable to wear masks at all times for some reason associated with their disability, students who may have challenges with distancing. And so we created this hierarchy, and we really created then these different levels of PPE that were distributed, which included distributing individual kits to teachers that were working with students with significant cognitive disabilities, meaning that they received the full range of the PPE that included disposable gowns, it included face shields, masks, closed goggles, the type of goggles that you might see when you're in a science class. And so there was the highest level of PPE that was provided to those teachers. And then we trained them on the appropriate use of that PPE. We really tried to put the knowledge and understanding in the hands of the teachers so that they wouldn't feel like they would need to wear the full range of the PPE every moment of the day, but they understood that there might be situations that might include interacting with a student who's resistant to wearing a mask. They might then double their efforts around the type of PPE that they're using, or when there needs to be a period where they're providing personal care to a student, that they might use select PPE from that kit. So the idea wasn't that they be, fully gowned up and wearing everything all at one time, but that they understood that these things are situational and that they have the materials available for them. And then we also provided additional materials to those schools in the case of things needing to be replaced. And that's above and beyond the standard levels of PPE that are being provided to all staff.
And if I may jump in also on that, I also had, in addition to the extensive PPE, I had the pleasure of visiting Carl Sandburg during my first week. Some of the additional steps I saw the staff taking in terms of not utilizing that indoor cafeteria, but spreading the students out across classrooms, individual desks. And I actually got to see them walking the students through the utilization of the PPE, how to use it, the redirecting that was involved. I thought it was tremendous. I didn't have the opportunity to get out to Rock Terrace and a few of the other sites, but I certainly would hope to do so. But I think the staff training is a piece I also wanted to add, because that was quite evident across at least what I saw at Carl Sandburg.
And I'll just add that all of that work was done with a wonderful cross-stakeholder group of folks, from schools, administrators, central office staff. And, the best learning that I took away from it was that, as folks were given the knowledge and the understanding and the materials, it helped to really alleviate some of their fears.
So, Ms. Celestri, I know that the Down Syndrome Network of Montgomery County has certainly reached out, and they reached out to me as well. So I'm planning to meet with a subset of them to continue to talk about any concerns that they may have. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity. Mr. Lynch will join me.
Thank you for doing that.
Yes, you're welcome.
That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Daka, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask about?
No, but I know that we all realize that it takes special people to teach these students, and they have a lot of skills, and they've done a really wonderful job in Montgomery County Public Schools. So thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Yes, so I too want to say thank you very much for all of this information. Ms. Lestre asked most of the other question that I had specifically put down. Also kind of re-emphasizing the what kind of steps we're going to be taking as kids need to kind of come and go, and the ability to go from virtual to in person when needed, as whether it's COVID quarantining or even just as the future goes along, kids who have physical ailments and things like that can't come in. So making, knowing that we are continuing to do work along those lines and working with the staff so that there's flexibility with all of that is very important. And so I thank you all for the work that you guys are doing. I didn't know, Ms. Mason, if you had anything else that you wanted to add, or anybody else. Otherwise, I think that would probably be it for us for the day.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Androsky, and to all of the board members. Thank you for your great questions, and we look forward to continuing to do this work.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that, I want to again thank all of our staff. You did a great job of answering our questions. And I know, or I hope you know, how much all of us as a full board and everybody appreciates the work that you guys do. I want to thank everyone who was watching and listening to this information, and to remind people that the meeting is available in English and in Spanish on the MCP-TV YouTube channels or online on our website. I just wanted to let the public know that we're going to continue to dedicating these meetings currently to updates about implementing supports and resources to our special populations of students during this time of recovery for COVID and trying to get back into the swing of things. Our next committee meeting will take place on December 16th. I hope everyone will tune in then. And for anyone who has additional questions, I said this in the beginning, but I'm going to reiterate it now. Questions that we may have missed or things that are still on your mind, please, please, please never hesitate to reach out to our special education office. We've got great people who are very dedicated and committed to serving our students and our families. So never hesitate to reach out and ask the questions that you need answered. If there's nothing else, I will call this meeting adjourned. And thank you all very much. Have a great afternoon. Bye.